Hello, I'm Craig DeRoche, CEO of Family Policy Alliance. Our movement's not a single organization, but we're really made up of a family of state level groups that work at a grassroots level locally where we all live toward a positive change in America where you all live. We have 40 family policy councils in 40 different states. We're trying to get to 50. We encourage you to look at the list if you're in one of the 10 states where we need to launch one. Over 50,000 churches that we work with 52 weeks out of the year. One of our most recent and innovative additions to our movement has been the Wyoming Family Alliance. Just an amazing story. In the short time they've helped lead an organization that was very small and not even well known to being just one of the most impactful organizations with wins for life, religious freedom, and really much more. Joining us is Nathan Winters, the president and CEO of Wyoming Family Alliance and Wyoming Family Alliance Foundation. He's served as a pastor. He served in the state legislature there. He's a really well rounded guy and he offers a lot of unique insights. Nathan, it is such a privilege to have you on the show and to be with us today. Thanks, brother.
It's such a joy to join you, Craig. I'm so excited about how God is using you in this entire movement to effect a very important series of changes in this country. And you can see it taking effect. It was just this last week. I was in Washington, D.C. with our congressman going back and forth lobbying on important adoption legislation. And it was on that Wednesday when we heard that Charlie Kirk had been assassinated. But one of the things that had really come through is I was standing there with our congressman in our office and when a staffer came in and talked about this, and she turned to me with sorrow, but also then that recognition that it's important for many, many other people who love the Lord dearly to carry forward with this message. And as I believe the scriptures tell us very clearly, to not grow weary in doing well. We met with a group of people on the Wyoming State Capitol stairs there. 150 people standing out in the rain to pray for our country, to pray for the events that are going on. And just this morning, for Constitution Day, at a school that I've had the joy of helping to found, I'm the founding chairman of the Hillsdale College Public Charter School, a curriculum school. We had all of the students and we talked about the Constitution. And I'm watching a generation grow up around us that are aware of what we need to do. And it takes those in our generation to look backwards and say, we want to bring you along. And that's happening in Wyoming. And God is using that to great effect.
Well, that's one of the things that I want people to understand that our family policy councils, we buy into the fact that the people that represent us in Cheyenne, Wyoming, in Lansing, Michigan, and Baltimore, Maryland, the state capitals, they represent the values of the culture where the culture already is. We want to work in the culture too. So you do program work as well as political work. And it's just amazing that it's a separate entity, but that you've actually created a school there too. While you advocate for education reform, you're actually in the education business. So thank you for pointing that out, Nathan. But and you talk about Charlie Kirk. He's so important to our movement. My wife and I had a dinner with him at one of our events. He spoke at our events. You know, he built his audience by working closely with family policy councils and Family Policy Alliance. He spoke as the keynote at your peer event in May, and he was scheduled to speak for Virginia and I believe Connecticut or another one coming up in the next 5 weeks. And just a really good guy and a really big loss. But what we're trying to do, folks, and why we're sharing is it's more than just Turning Point USA. We love them. They come to SoConCon. They're a sponsor. Charlie Kirk had signed up personally to be a reader of America Reads the Bible. In the meantime, we have organizations and we have opportunities for you to get involved. Um, we're seeing a new energy, I think, coming out of this too, Nathan. Give an example in Wyoming of what the Wyoming Family Council is doing, coming up with this policy summit this month.
Yeah, see, I love the way you frame that because while there are national movements, it's important for people in every state to know how to engage, to have the direct relationships with legislators across the state and grass tops leadership. And so, this coming about a week and a half from now, we're going to have the opportunity, first of all, to have our congressman, wonderful lady Harriet Hageman, speak for us. She loves the family. She cares very deeply about our issues. And then the following day, we're going to actually, we've invited the legislature and Grasstop's leadership to talk about DEI in our schools. We have legislation that has been passed, but there are issues that still, which what we've watched is there's kind of a embedding of some of those ideas in some curricula. So we're bringing in legislators. There's a wonderful senator here, Senator Sherry Steinmetz, that is really focused on this issue. And then Matt Beinberg from the Goldwater Institute, this is one of his big areas of concern. So we're speaking on that first. Then we've talked about school discipline issues. So we have a state representative, and a wonderful thing too, she's actually one of our statesmen alumni from our wonderful Statesman Academy. And she's coming to speak on this issue along with our Wyoming State Superintendent of Public Instruction, a wonderful lady, Megan Degenfelder. They are coordinating very well to talk about school discipline issues. Then we have Evie Brennan, another state senator, with some other folk in a panel talking about parental rights. Then we talk about school and public policies and or school and public libraries. The wonderful thing we have is the opportunity with Blaine Kanzati, who's my counterpart over in Idaho. They've been very successful. He actually spoke at our Statesman Academy this last year. He's coming in to talk about what they've done in Idaho. And then our chairman of our Judiciary Committee is going to join him, and I'll do a panel with the two of them talking about how we can take the best practices from everywhere else and bring them to Wyoming. Of course, throughout the day, we have folk who work for Wyoming Family Alliance, and the leader of our Wyoming School Boards Resource Network is speaking. The leader of our pro-life community, our community liaison, a wonderful Navy wife, she's coming in to speak and continue to introduce all of these things that Wyoming Family Alliance is doing.
And so you're giving an example, and we want people, and we're going to put the links up here. If you live in Wyoming, we want you to go to this particular event. But Nathan, we're also talking to a national audience here. Not everybody can go to this event. They can check it out online. We want you to see what Nathan has cooking because it's coming up. But Texas is having a policy event this coming weekend. Several states, New Jersey and Virginia, are in gubernatorial elections. They have a funky year where they're actually involved in governor races. And we want you to get plugged in your states. That's why I wanted Nathan to talk here about what a policy day looks like, where you can learn more about these policy battles that we're having. And we hope, we hope the answer is not going to come from Washington, D.C. But we believe that the federal government is there to protect our civil rights, not to actually raise our kids for us. We want the policy set where we live. So we want you to get involved. And that's why we wanted Nathan to come on and give an example of how you can step up and do this. Tell folks about the so what. If you go to these events and you talk about things where you say, well, we have these bad things in, say, the school curriculum, and we learned about that on a policy day, but do we do anything about it, Nathan? Or are these just things where I'm angrier when I am driving home from the event from when I went to the event? Like what do people learn about? What do they get the opportunity to be a part of if they work with a Family Policy Council, Family Policy Alliance?
I I love the way you phrase that question. It's very good because often it's easier to describe what the problem is than to talk about good solutions and workable solutions. And that's what Wyoming Family Alliance has positioned itself to be in Wyoming, the people who bring the best ideas. That's the reason why we had the most successful year in the Wyoming legislature that I've seen now in 14 years. It's because a lot of the ideas that we've brought forward over the last 3 years have begun to really take effect, and people are implementing them now. But I appreciate that. I remember several years back reading a book, and it was on international trade. And the fellow did a great job of describing in the 3 quarters of the book what the problem was. Then the last quarter, his solution was horrible. It really was just doubling down on the problem. What we do in Wyoming is we actually bring these thought leaders in and then put them in front of people who have worked on this, have devoted their life to it from around the nation, and then talk it through. And that becomes a policy discussion that often then carries forward in the Wyoming legislature. And so last year, as we watched 23 of the bills that we were working on passed, it was because that conversation had been ongoing for years. And we weren't just trying it. I think it was Chuck Colson who used to make the statement that outrage is not a strategy. And for us, what we're looking to do is actually come up with a thoughtful, strategic approach. And so while the tacticians are working on the House and Senate floors, we as strategists are trying to give them the very best tools. And that's what this policy summit gives us the opportunity to do.
So let's talk about that. And I think everybody's aware of one of our policy campaigns. It's such a blessing, Nathan, by the way, to be involved in a ministry where everybody's aware of your issue, right? It's called Save Girls Sports, and it was started by Family Policy Alliance with Idaho, with Blaine Gonzatti, who we just said, in 2017, roughly. And it was the trampling of the civil rights, hard fought, of women over many thousands of years through lots of different cultures and societies, and this was an affront. And our organizations stood up for the women's civil rights, and nobody else got involved. Like, no political party, no chamber of commerce, nobody showed up for the fight. It was literally just us. But now that's been demonstrated, where this month, you know, Gavin Newsom, Rahm Emanuel are running for president of the United States, the Democratic Party. They're using the same talking points that Nathan Winters helped develop on Saving Girls Sports. Mayor Pete, a man who's married, as he would describe it, to another man, he is using your talking points, Nathan. People misunderstand the work of the family policy councils. They think it's divisive and they think it's partisan. I think that Saving Girls Sports is one of the most bipartisan things going on in America right now. You recently did that this year. Tell us of the status of how we're making progress with that issue.
It's been quite a story there, Craig, because actually it started about 3 years ago. And we had a really good bill drafted up. It didn't make it its first year. The second year, there was a kind of weak version, but last year we had the opportunity to really make that one of the very best in the nation. The wonderful thing about that, and I feel like this is important for a lot of people involved in public policy to recognize, and that's that this is not like a football game where everybody plays a season and then goes home and then gets ready for the next season. This is constant shepherding, and it means the development of those relationships and the opportunity to persuade and help people see things. Sometimes legislators are a little concerned to step into something early, but as you just continue to show the love of Christ and you speak the truth in love, it has that long term effect. And that's what we've done here in Wyoming. And I'm appreciative that now national opinion polls and everything else have shown that when it comes to reality, what I believe it was Cicero and Seneca used to talk about as the sensus communis, common sense, people are just tired of others saying, hey, that boy is a girl. And there's a point where they're saying, no, that is an unfair thing to see Riley Gaines standing up next to that very tall fellow who is taking medals away from all these other girls. And so I think more and more are recognizing that importance. But it's important for us to note that we were at the forefront of that because what we stand for is timeless truth. Regardless of the cultural circumstances, we're here constantly speaking truth in love, day in and day out. Wyoming Family Alliance and all of our family policy council.
So but you got girls' sports are protected in Wyoming, correct? You're one of the states that has done that, and your governor signed that, correct? Not we didn't have to override your governor. Now, the next issue that was started in 2017. Then we found out, folks, that everybody's trying to lie about. They're still trying to lie about this. People were doing surgeries in these hormones that were not approved by the FDA. Hormone in kids. What could go wrong when you put in untested hormones into a kid's brain while they're still developing? We know what's going wrong. We know what's misfiring. Wyoming Family Alliance, as well as your peers, have been at the forefront trying to say you can't use these drugs on children because they're permanent. They're going to have side effects. Did you get that passed in Wyoming too?
We did. It was quite a battle. And I'll say, sadly, Wyoming is an overwhelmingly Republican state. That doesn't necessarily mean conservative or Christian. But it was just a year and a half ago that a doctor on the Wyoming Board of Medicine was dismissed from that board by our Republican governor for daring to stand against the Wyoming Medical Association, who was trying to push for transgender surgery and transgender medicine. And he was saying, no, no, when we look at this from a doctoral point of view, from a medical point of view, this is unsound. And he was dismissed after trying everything else. So all of that to say that while we are heavily Republican, there's a lot of work that we have to put in place and build up the grassroots support, and why it's so important to have that relationship with so many people in a state like Wyoming. It's face-to-face personal relationships that get that kind of legislation passed.
Now, the people, and these are my words, not yours, but the people that are into this weird recruiting, of stuff. They want the books in the schools. They want to recruit these kids. That's my opinion. Why else would you want to inject yourself into sexual activity? We don't teach kids how to gamble. You don't teach them how to mix drinks. Why do you need to teach them about these weird sex acts? And that is a fight we're having with this radical transgender ideology, but beneath that itself is pornography. And pornography has been something since the beginning of time, probably. You can't draw that in a cave that way, you heathen, right? Somebody got in trouble for it, but it's everywhere. And our kids are exposed to it so early. Our social media, our public schools, nobody takes this seriously, but you're passing policy, Nathan, and tell people that the approach you're taking on policy with pornography, and maybe start with the fact that this is one where you would think that there's two sides, but this is maybe the most one-sided, nonpartisan issue. I mean, we're really getting traction from, secular liberals in cracking down on pornography, or is that a false statement?
Well, no, I think that there is that awareness where we're watching the odd dynamics of the conversation come from is from some who try to, and we passionately, of course, believe in the First Amendment. Back when I was in the Wyoming legislature, a signature bill was the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. And it was wonderful how God used that conversation in so many different ways. But in that, you recognize the importance of the First Amendment. I think what we've watched the radical left do, and you're right, it's not most of the left, it's just the radical side. They've tried to say that we're harming the First Amendment by not putting every kind of material into the hands of a child. Now, we recognize that that is a really odd statement way back when, the MPAA ratings. It was one of those things where people recognize, people under the age of 13 probably shouldn't look at that. That should be a parental decision, and that's, they should be 17 at least before they see that. And so we have recognized as a culture the importance of this subject. And yet, the way some on the radical left, the far left, have pitched this is that somehow a young child's rights are being abridged if they cannot have pornographic pictures to look at in the library. I think once we have the opportunity to frame it, people see, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Again, it's that appeal to the common sense, the sensus communis. And so Blaine Kanzadi in Idaho has done great work, he and his team, in highlighting how to make sure this navigates all of the proper legal findings that from ages past, and how to also protect our children at the same time. Throughout the interim committee hearings, our state education committee, our joint education committee, has been working on this issue, and it's been great. Liaison to the legislature, Carrie Klein, a wonderful lady, has been working step by step by step, not only with them, but also with our state superintendent of public instruction and others. That's the reason why we actually have them coming to speak on this issue. It's leadership and the very best minds meeting together to talk about policy at our policy summit.
Well, folks, I hope that you're getting a kick out of hearing this right now, because this is what you've made possible by supporting Family Policy Alliance and Family Policy Councils. We're not the ones that are just tearing things down. We're not the ones that are just showing up and spitting epitaphs at people and talking about how broken the world is. It's very broken right now, and there's a lot of challenges, but we're trying to proactively and positively be a part of that solution. If you think that we're your tribe, if you are a Christian, if the Spirit is working on your heart, you are saying, but I don't know how to express myself, I don't know where to begin, dare we say, hazard us, to say it this way, maybe start where you live instead of trying to get involved with an organization from on high, with a one size fits all national movement. We're from the bottom up, and we want you to be involved where you live in one of our 40 state family policy councils first. We want you involved nationally with us too. We'll invite you to amazing things like our VIP tour of DC in October that's coming up, and in our America Reads the Bible in April. But we want you to be a part of our state councils because folks, we're flat out changing it everywhere we go. And this is a wonderful opportunity for us to raise up the next generation of political leaders. Nathan, you've given people a really wonderful sketch of the work you're doing, why it matters. Talk to them about your enthusiasm as we head to 2026. So, what are they joining something that's on its way to losing its energy, or are people showing up at a time where it seems like God has made it just for right now, for Christians and social conservatives to rally?
Well, amen. No, it has been so wonderful to watch what God has done since our official launch as Wyoming Family Alliance in October of 2022 until now. It is extraordinary to watch the, as you've described it before, a hockey stick sort of trajectory. And all I can say is that hockey stick actually looks like it's going to start becoming vertical because we've already watched in this last election and then with the policy that followed strong results. And we believe that 2026 is actually just going to accentuate that all the more. And so it's been wonderful. We just had the opportunity to buy our a headquarters just 2 blocks from the state capitol. And already the Speaker of the House and others have reached out and said, hey, we want to walk alongside you and use that facility for meetings and things like that. And so it is just looking really wonderful.
It's just amazing what's going on in our movement, and Wyoming is a wonderful example of that. We love the governor, we love your congresswoman, we love your other elected leaders as well, and we love your legislature. But folks, we're doing this every day all over the country with several governors as I'm talking to you right now. I was in Washington, D.C. even this morning. I was in the VA yesterday with Secretary Collins doing wonderful faith-based work for our veterans. Folks, this is a time for you to raise your hand, get involved. We want you at America Reads the Bible. We've never read the Bible over America like Ezra did in Nehemiah, then organized the families to do the work, or Joshua on Mount Ebal to read the scrolls over America. We're going to do that in April. We want you to be a part of that. But more than anything, we want you to be a part of a standing army of people that are civically engaged, that do the stewardship over the talents, the bags of gold that God has given us. We own the country, we own the school district, we own our city already. And are we participating in the elections? We make that easy with Christians Engaged. Thank you for being with us this week. Thank you, Nathan Winters and Wyoming Family Alliance and Foundation. And folks, please, if you're from Wyoming, click on the links and sign up there. If you're from a different state, we need you there. And it's until next week. Blessings to all.